Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed, Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what weight would they fight?
Well,
it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have told you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking at.
Joe Rogan was visibly shocked when he learned that Jake Paul had reached out to Francis Ngannou as a potential replacement opponent after the cancellation of his matchup with Gervonta Tank Davis. On his podcast, Rogan described the idea as insane and borderline reckless, stressing that Jake Paul might be biting off far more than he can chew. Rogan reminded his audience that Ngannou isn't just a former UFC champion, he is widely regarded as one of the most terrifying punchers in all of combat sports. Rogan questioned if Jake truly understood the magnitude of danger he was inviting. Still, he admitted that if this matchup somehow materialized, it would generate massive global attention and become one of the biggest spectacles the crossover combat world has ever seen.
Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out. And Francis says, all right. And Francis says, well, how can I help you? Nikista says, well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out. And Francis says, all right, but specifically, how can I help you? Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out. And Francis asks him again, okay, what?
After the exhibition fight with Gervonta Davis collapsed due to Davis's escalating legal troubles, Jake Paul and his management team were forced into panic mode. They quickly began exploring last-minute replacements, and among the names that surfaced was none other than Francis Ngannou. The former UFC Heavyweight Champion, now a crossover boxer, carries enormous weight, power, and a worldwide reputation for knocking out elite fighters. Considering his terrifying punching ability and intimidating presence, his name immediately created shockwaves within the boxing community.
I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more, we don't think it'll.
Michael Bisping highlighted the absurd physical differences between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou. He emphasized the dramatic leap from preparing to fight Gervonta Davis, a lightweight who was significantly smaller, to suddenly targeting a heavyweight monster who weighs nearly twice as much. Bisping stressed that the shift isn't just unusual, it borders on reckless matchmaking. He explained that the jump from someone with Davis's size to someone with Ngannou's mass, reach, and pure knockout ability creates a mismatch on every level: skill, physicality, danger, and credibility.
Like Mike Tyson, who's 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua. And that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props, I'd give him his credit. And you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout, because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, you know, an admirable thing to do, and it will be Jake Paul taking on somebody bigger.
Francis Ngannou himself later revealed that Jake Paul's offer came out of nowhere and caught him completely off guard. According to Ngannou, the proposal didn't align with his professional plans, nor did the terms make sense. He stated that while money was briefly mentioned, he had no interest in taking a fight simply for a payday. More importantly, Ngannou questioned how Jake Paul's team could logically jump from fighting someone as small as Davis to suddenly proposing him, suggesting that the idea seemed more like publicity than a serious athletic decision.
Like Jake to replace Gervonta, I'm like, who's Jake? You know, like, I was so confused, you know, like, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, you know, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on, don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say like, they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He send out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started talk. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my.
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier offered one of the strongest warnings yet to Jake Paul. Cormier stressed that Francis Ngannou's power is unlike anything Jake has ever faced or even imagined. The mismatch in size, experience, and striking ability is so vast that Cormier warned the consequences could be severe. He argued that Jake Paul, despite his improvements and victories, is still not equipped to withstand the explosion and raw danger of a heavyweight who built his reputation by knocking out elite mixed martial artists.
Paul goes from fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off his planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis. Because all it takes is for one.
Cormier doubled down, asserting that Jake Paul's motivation seemed driven more by spotlight and controversy than genuine competition. He warned that Jake may be severely underestimating the difference between MMA-level power and heavyweight-level boxing punches. In boxing, Ngannou's power becomes even more concentrated, and his ability to punch through gloves is well documented. Cormier predicted that if Jake actually stepped into the ring without fully understanding these risks, the fight could end extremely quickly and violently.
Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight, and that's it.
Several analysts across the fight world have also criticized the idea of Jake Paul fighting Francis Ngannou on such short notice. They argue that while Davis's withdrawal forced Jake's team to look elsewhere, trying to get Ngannou last minute is strategically disastrous. Ngannou, who carefully plans each stage of his career, saw no benefit in stepping in randomly. Analysts also noted that Jake would not have enough time to prepare physically or technically for someone with Ngannou's strength and experience. Many experts have even compared this proposed matchup to Tyson Fury versus Ngannou, another spectacle that shocked the world. Fury, one of the greatest heavyweight boxers, admitted that his bout with Ngannou was one of his toughest in the last decade. If Fury struggled, they argue, Jake Paul would face a mountain far steeper.
The thing about this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. But anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this, and you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua is a two-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Chael Sonnen added his perspective, describing the potential fight as both humorous and genuinely intriguing. From a competitive standpoint, Sonnen explained, the matchup makes little traditional sense. Ngannou isn't someone you measure yourself against, he's someone you survive. He reminded fans that Tyson Fury, a much bigger and far more experienced boxer than Jake, was dropped by a single clean shot from Ngannou. If Fury barely absorbed that punch, Sonnen questioned how Jake Paul could possibly stand up to the same level of force.
Francis says fighting Jake Paul wouldn't make sense. Well, what in the hell do you think Tyson Fury got for boxing you? These aren't mean things for me. This is a reality. Tyson Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. It's a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson. How those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see.
Observers note that Jake Paul's career has been built on massive promotions and headline-grabbing stunts, but this time the public interest simply hasn't connected. Unlike his previous fights, with opponents closer in size and experience, this idea feels unbalanced, unfocused, and lacking direction. Many argue that Jake's attempts to stay relevant through unpredictable matchups may finally be losing their effect. Even with weeks of marketing, interviews, and hype, ticket sales have remained stagnant, raising concerns about whether fans are growing tired of spectacle-based matchmaking.
He's retired. Tank still being in the competitive nature of the sport throws this one completely off for me, and the fact that Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is. Right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport, he doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense, and he's making a mockery of things. This is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching guys.
Chael Sonnen reiterated that while Jake Paul's confidence is entertaining, taking on someone like Francis Ngannou is an entirely different reality. Jake doesn't have the size, durability, or heavyweight experience that Tyson Fury possesses, and if Fury barely survived one clean punch, it's unrealistic to believe Jake could withstand even that much.
Bludgeoning. You can't even grab a hold of the guy or try to squeeze him. You could only bludgeon and be bludgeoned back. I think you're got an uphill battle to question somebody. But they have been very effective in doing just that to Jake. Hey, you start with this NBA guy, and even those MMA guys, they're not boxers. And then when you got around to the boxers, but they weren't current boxers. Then when you get around to the current boxers, they're not big enough boxers. And I just loved it. When I heard that Francis Ngannou might be going against Jake, I loved it. I mean, what's that gonna look like? How many of those shots from Francis can you take? Tyson Fury, they're talking clean. Tyson Fury only took one. Everything else, Tyson was able to roll with. Big Francis only had to hit him one time. Like, that's a
Tim Bradley weighed in on the broader consequences of the cancelled Davis vs. Paul fight, explaining that the financial impact extended far beyond the two fighters. Promoters, broadcasters, venues, sponsors, and marketing teams all suffered losses. Networks backed away due to the legal complications surrounding Davis, and sponsors were quickly forced to protect their brands. Bradley emphasized how fragile boxing economics can be. When one fighter's reputation collapses, everyone who invested in the event pays the price.
Let's get on Tank real quick. You gotta be the dumbest dude, in the history of boxing, bro. $40 million, dog, down the drain. You gotta be the dumbest dude I've ever seen in the history of boxing, bro. Seriously. I'm like, $40 million, bro. Wealth. Literally wealth, bro. Going down the drain. I don't understand it. I can't make I don't understand it. But I'll tell you this. MVP promotions, whatever the hell y'all call it, most valuable promotions, shit, more like rookie promotions. Yeah, more like rookie promotions. You didn't know what you were dealing with. You had no clue. This has always been down Tank's alley, man. Now, let me just say one thing.
Bradley continued, explaining that a large amount of money had already been poured into logistics, production, marketing, and media preparation, all of which is now essentially gone. He contrasted the scrapped Davis bout with the proposed Paul vs. Ngannou matchup, emphasizing how dramatically different this new challenge would be. Ngannou, weighing around 260 pounds and known for historic knockout power, would require Jake Paul to completely transform his training camp. Jake would need to increase muscle mass, build durability, change his footwork, upgrade his conditioning, and adjust sparring partners to heavyweight-level threats. Analysts argue that Paul cannot treat this fight as just another influencer spectacle. It would demand months, if not more, of legitimate high-level preparation.
It would be something unique. It would be something incredible. It's the same reason that I would be intrigued by a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, although I would never advise Jake Paul to take a Anthony Joshua fight. I wouldn't advise him to take a Francis Ngannou fight either, because as much as Anthony is far better, which we saw when they actually fought, Joshua slept Francis Ngannou quicker than me after 2 melatonin. It was quick, fast, in a hurry, completely dominant. But we also saw Francis Ngannou go toe-to-toe with the heavyweight champion of the world at that time. Yes, he was out of shape. We understand that. But Tyson Fury on that night got the shock of his life when Francis Ngannou not only went toe-to-toe, but put him down and danced on him. To this day, I think that fight could have gone Francis' way. Point being, there are levels to this shit. Not just in boxing, but in combat in general. And the size difference Francis would have over Jake would be incredible, but it would have been a great event. And a lot of people would have tuned in. Francis, though, is saying that's not happening.
How can they go from Gervonta Davis to Francis Ngannou? Gervonta Davis is a fantastic boxer, but and is a one-shot knockout artist. But come on, the weight different and everything, it makes no sense.
It's a good point. I mean, obviously, Francis is right about the weight difference, but it's a good point in general for what do you do next? Jake has sparred guys like Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, Montana Love to try to prepare for Tank Davis. And even if you book this fight on December 12th or December 19th, that's still a completely different fight than you were going into. Completely different matchup, size-wise, skill-wise, the things that you're going to need to even try to compete.
The final question remains. Is this matchup an electrifying high-risk showdown or a dangerous mismatch that should never happen? Share your thoughts in the comments below.